Persona!
Howdy, my totally as always tubular gamers. We're back with another ranking video, and today's ranking video is going to be on a much beloved series of games, and that's going to be the Persona games. Yep, that's right, we're finally going to look at the Persona games. Well, the main 6 Persona games, as I'm still actually playing through some of the spin-offs and other games, and those can be lists on their own. And we're going to only be looking at one version of each game. Almost every mainline Persona game has been re-released or remixed in some kind of way, and yeah, no, we're just going to look at one version of each game. For the two people that don't know, Persona is actually part of the Shin Megami Tensei series of games. It was originally a spin-off of the SMT series, but has since become its own thing basically and is far more popular than SMT has ever been. All of the main games were developed by Atlus, who have made a majority of the SMT games and a bunch of strange other games throughout the years as well, but their most famous series is definitely Persona. But Persona wasn't incredibly popular immediately. When it originally came out on the PS1, it was just another Shin Megami Tensei spin-off. There were so many spin-offs in the 90s of this series that yeah, it really was just another game. Of course, the absolutely most hardcore of JRPG fans knew about Persona and Shin Megami Tensei as a whole, but it wasn't really until Persona 3 came out on the PS2 that people really started to take even a little notice. Persona 3 added a lot of gameplay wrinkles to the first couple games that a lot of people really did enjoy, such as the life sim aspects that were from another Shin Megami Tensei game, but it was all blended in a really nice way. Then a couple years later we got Persona 4, which was gaining even more success, but it really was when Persona 5 came out. That is when the series hit the big time. And that's not to discredit the other games' success. They did have success as well. It was Persona 5, though, that really just blew everything up and shot it into the stratosphere as one of the definitive JRPG series, and it got Joker to be one of the most popular characters in JRPGs. Persona 5 was actually so good that it caused a lot of people to go back and try the older Persona games to see what they were like and if they were as good as Persona 5. But not your boy Tubular Jonathan here. Nope, I played Persona 3 first, and then I went on to play Persona 5, and then I went back and played all the other Persona games. Oh yeah, and these games are stupidly long, with some of them taking 70, 80, maybe even like 100 hours to complete. Yes, actually. Now, when it comes to the Persona games, they are absolutely beloved for a few reasons. The amazing storylines, the excellent world building, the great characters, just lovable characters, the superb writing, the challenging gameplay. There's a lot of reasons why a lot of people really do love the Persona series. I mean, that's why I love these games. Now, when it comes to ranking these games, we've obviously got a bit of criteria. How easy is it to come back and play the game? Is it incredibly archaic? How's the gameplay? How's the story? Does it progress well? How are the characters? How is everything? And again, I know that a lot of these games are really beloved, and I'm sure everyone has their own opinion on how a ranking would look with these games. So before you tell me I'm just totally wrong or I don't know what I'm talking about, tell me your list. I'd love to hear it. Then you can tell me I'm wrong. As always, like, share, sub. Let's get right into it. We're ranking all 6 of the mainline Persona games. Good start to the Sega month. What's the worst mainline game? It should come as no surprise that we have the original Persona at the bottom of the list. Revelations Persona, released for the PlayStation. It was almost a launch title, one of the first JRPGs on the console with Wild Arms. And it was re-released on the PSP, which is a much better version, but I would still have this game at the bottom of the list. Now, I'm not going to say that this game is bad. None of the games on this list are bad, but when it comes to the first Persona, I have tried to get into this game on more than one occasion, and I just could not get into it, and I ended up putting it down after a few hours every single time. The story in this game is very weird, where it's about these high school kids who are playing this game called Persona, apparently, at the high school when some shit goes down, and yeah, I'm going to just keep it simple like that. The plot of the game is very strange. It is definitely more of a Shin Megami Tensei plot than a Persona plot. It is not what you've come to expect from a Persona plot. It's there, and it's actually pretty decent, and the characters are fine enough, but nobody is on the level of, say, Persona 3, 4, 5's characters. And you know, after playing all the later games and coming back to the original Persona, it is kind of jarring. It's a very dark game thematically. Like, it's a really sinister game, and the PSP version definitely lightens the tone and tries to make it more like the later Persona games, but it's just a really dark game. But I can't knock the world, characters, and story all that much, as it is pretty decent. What I can knock is this gameplay. Now, the gameplay is really where I think Persona 1 just completely falls off the rails. Unfortunately, coming back to Persona 1 is a very difficult experience, as the game is just incredibly archaic and outdated. Sadly, this game is ridiculously dated and it's kind of aged like crap. In fact, I would argue that it's one of the most dated RPGs that I've ever played. And before you go, oh, it's just a zoomer, he doesn't know that RPGs were always like this back in the day. No, I recently played through Final Fantasy 1 through 5, thanks to the pixel remasters, and I can tell you they've aged all better than this game. I've played through the original couple Dragon Quests on NES, they've all aged better than this game. Okay, not Final Fantasy 2, but even some of the original SMT games I feel like have aged better than this game. The PSP version does actually fix some of my issues and it does speed things up, which is good, but it still does feel incredibly dated. I really hated the dungeon design in this game. It felt like a bunch of just confusing floors, almost confusing on purpose, with an insanely high encounter rate. It just led to the game feeling incredibly tedious. When it came to the navigation, it really sucks. Like, I really do not like how clunky this navigation is. It's probably the most dated part of the game. I've never been a fan of the first-person dungeons, but like, I really dislike it in this game. I really dislike the interface as well, as it feels very unnatural, it seems very unintuitive, and it just is incredibly clunky. And this poor interface adds to why I don't like the battles. I don't like the grid system that's presented in the original Persona. I think this is just completely unnecessary. There are multiple spots on the grid that are useless, and I think it actually detracts from the battling in general. I'm sure if I played a ton of this game, I could probably get into it, as the story is actually pretty decent, but I just could not get past that slow, tedious gameplay, the poor, unintuitive interface, the grindy, confusing navigation, and generally lame presentation, especially on the map screen. Like, this looks like crap. At least the music, the music on the PSP at least, that's real good. But I just can't recommend this game, but if for some reason you really want to play the original, play the PSP version. So here in the number 5 spot we have Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. We'll be looking at the PS1 version since the PSP version never actually came to America. The game is very similar to Persona 2 Innocent Sin, the game that takes place before this. This game is actually a direct sequel to Innocent Sin. The game is about Maya Amano, a character from Innocent Sin and potential love interest. It's about Maya investigating the Joker curse, which is what got started in Innocent Sin, where all the dreams and rumors are coming true and causing chaos. Like I'll explain for Innocent Sin, this game is a large step forward from the original Persona with a much better story, much better characters. It's a lot more interesting. Taking place after Innocent Sin is already interesting enough. A character or two shows up from the original Persona, and that's pretty cool to see them interconnected. Yeah, it's just a lot better. The presentation is a lot better. The music is pretty good. It still is tonally pretty dark and different from later Persona games, but I actually do quite enjoy it. I think for the most part the character development is actually really good. I was a fan of what happens in this game, and I'm not going to obviously spoil anything, but yeah, I quite liked it. It isn't just the story that's way better than P1. I think this game really does address almost every criticism I had with the original game. Like, the presentation is much better than the original game. It looks a lot nicer, the sprites are better, the music still slaps, the music's great. But the gameplay really does address my big issues with the original game. For instance, the game is a lot faster, the battles go faster, you move faster. It's not in first person anymore when you're in the dungeons are a lot better designed, it's a lot more intuitive. The menus, they're still not great, and during battle it can be a little unintuitive and clunky, but they're a bit better than the first games. And the whole grid/movement system has just been nuked. It's gone. There's no more moving your characters along the grid to make it so they can actually hit stuff. All that, no. It's just a regular turn-based RPG in that aspect. Good. And when you are doing the battles, it's more of that SMT gameplay that a lot of people really like. And of course, it is a bit unrefined here when compared to later Persona games, but I think it is fine enough for the most part. The battles can get pretty in-depth, and this game can get pretty challenging. Nowhere near as challenging or just ridiculous as the first game, but it can get challenging. The game does have a very high encounter rate still, which is definitely one of my issues with it. The navigation, while it is better, it isn't perfect. The camera is kind of annoying. And certain enemies can just eat a dick with how annoying they are, and talking to them, well, talking to them is better, but I hate talking to these demons. I do kind of like some of the exploration, though. I like the whole rumor system also. I think that is kind of cool. I think that this is a pretty decent PS1 RPG. It is a bit underrated, especially compared to other games, and it could absolutely benefit from a remake. I really don't know why the PSP version just never came to America. I'm sure I'd like this game more if I played that version, where there's a lot of quality of life improvements. And unlike P1, I can actually recommend this game. I would say, though, that if you're going to play this game, you really should play Innocent Sin first, or you're going to be pretty lost. Speaking of Innocent Sin, So here in the number 4 spot, we have Persona 2 Innocent Sin. We're looking at the PSP version since the US never got the PS1 version. Innocent Sin is very similar to Eternal Punishment. It takes place before Eternal Punishment. It came out originally before Eternal Punishment, but we never actually got it in the US until the PSP re-release, and this re-release adds a lot of quality of life improvements that make me like it a little bit more than Eternal Punishment. It still does feel pretty different from what modern day Persona is, especially tonally, as it is still a pretty dark game. Despite that, I think the characters and story is actually pretty good. The protagonist of Innocent Sin is Tetsuya Suyo, a senior student at Seven Sisters, the high school of this Persona game. He usually keeps it pretty quiet, pretty cool. He's almost a silent protagonist. It's about him investigating a curse placed on the high school, and, well, a lot of shit goes down. It has to do with dreams coming to life, rumors coming to life, and eventually, of course, the fate of the world is in the balance of some high school students. I feel that the plot is a lot better than Persona 1. I think it's just a lot more interesting, it flows a lot better, the pacing's better, the characters are better. Just about everything is better when it comes to the plot, the world, and the characters in general. I mean, even Hitler with sunglasses shows up, so if that isn't interesting to you, I don't know what is. The gameplay is basically the same as Persona Eternal Punishment, where you do explore around these dungeons. It's not in first person anymore. The rumor system's there, which is pretty interesting, and get into a lot of battles. The grid system's gone. The battles are your standard SMT affair. I quite like them though. And I like the quality of life improvements that the PSP version brings, like a better interface and it just being faster. A nice wrinkle is that all of your characters can freely change personas in battle, which is cool, and it has this new fusion spell mechanic that is also nice. I will say the menus behind the fusion spells and switching personas does get a bit tiresome and clunky the longer you play the game, but it's still pretty neat nonetheless. I think Persona 2 is a pretty good RPG. It is honestly pretty underrated, especially when compared to the other Persona games. I say that as I have this game also kinda near the bottom of the list, so I guess I'm just as bad as everyone else. I think this game would really benefit from like a full-on remake, Eternal Punishment more so, but this game really would also, both of them would benefit from a full-on remake, not the PSP remakes, like full, maybe 3D even remakes, as I think that they're both great games, they both are unfairly like ignored, and I think remakes would dispel that. But let's get on to the next game. In the number 3 spot, we have Persona 3 FES, released on the PS2 back in the late 2000s. Now, Persona 3 really changed the Persona series. It really changed it to what it is nowadays. The tone was really different. The game does add a lot more life sim elements, such as the day cycle, interacting with side characters and the social links. Of course, in the old games, you interacted with characters and you grew with the characters, but it wasn't anything like this. The story's pretty different from the other Persona games. It's not really connected to them either. You play as a new student in a school. He just transferred to this new school and he, just wants to be a normal Japanese high schooler, but shit goes down. You see, every night at around midnight, something called the Dark Hour happens, where seemingly almost everyone is put in a coffin at night and strange creatures come out at night. Also, this giant tower known as Tartarus shows up. However, your character and a number of classmates can still freely move around and you can actually fight these creatures. All of you team up together to figure out what the hell is this and really just figuring out this mystery. The story is actually really quite good in Persona 3. While I thought the story was good in both Persona 2s, I think Persona 3 just kind of blows it out of the water and really is just leagues above it when it comes to its storytelling, its characters, and its general world building. I think it is just much better. I wouldn't say it's absolutely amazing, as I do think the game does have some pacing issues with the story where the initial premise is interesting, but then like nothing happens for half the game, and it can be a bit predictable, but I would still say the story is really well done. The characters are all very likable. And just about all the characters go through their own arcs, and I really did enjoy the arcs as well, as it does keep the game more interesting and fresh for sure. Aside from the story, the gameplay is rather different. Obviously, when it comes to the battles, it is still pretty similar to the other games, as it still is an SMT game at heart. It is turn-based, a lot of the weaknesses and strengths are important here, and you'll frequently be managing resources. Something different from other Persona games is that you can't directly control your party members. You can influence them to a certain degree, but you actually cannot directly control them. I believe on the PSP version this was fixed though, but in this original version this has got to be like the most bafflingly stupid decision that they could have possibly made for the battles. Like, the battles are much harder in this game than they have any right to be, thanks to your dumbass teammates. I could honestly be here all day explaining why I hate this so much that you can't directly control your party members, but I actually did a review of this game a couple years ago, and I'll just put a link on the screen here. But when you aren't battling, you're probably exploring the game's primary dungeon, Tartarus, this huge tower with tons and tons of floors, hundreds of floors, all randomly generated. Getting caught up with enemies, generally grinding and finding some treasure, and then of course getting into boss fights. I actually really have come to despise Tartarus. I actually really hate this dungeon. I don't like that it's randomly generated. I don't like that the rooms feel so copy-paste. I don't like any of the dungeon exploring in general. The movement sucks in this as well. It's very clunky. Yeah, I just don't really like Tartarus at all. Okay, I've talked enough trash about the game. Let me tell you something I really do like. I really do like the whole life sim aspects of the game. I really do like how it goes from day to day. I really do like all the social interactions. I really do like the social links that you can form in this game. I like exploring around in just the real world. I really do actually like all of those aspects. I think it really does prop this game up. Don't get it twisted. I do like the game. In fact, I like it more than the last couple games I talked about. I just do have some issues with it. I think the battle system can actually be pretty good, especially when your AI isn't dumb as rocks, which isn't very often, but you can have a lot of strategy with it, which is cool. While I really hate Tartarus, there's a couple other smaller dungeons in this game that aren't that bad, and at the very least the game has a fantastic soundtrack. The soundtrack is just superb. The other couple games I mentioned, yeah, there are some good tunes in there, but nothing compared to Persona 3. Persona 3 rules when it comes to the soundtrack, and the presentation, it was okay. What really does save the game, in my opinion, though, is that excellent story, characters, and world building. It does have a few issues here and there, but I do really like the story a lot. Now, something that has always really confused me is when I hear people say that the best Persona is Persona 3, like, what? I just scratch my head and wonder, how could someone think that? I think this game just has way too many big issues to be the best Persona. Obviously, there's way more good than bad, but the best Persona? No way, not for me at least. I know some people won't agree with it, but here in the number 2 spot we have Persona 4 Golden, released originally on the Vita in the early 2010s. Persona 4, especially Golden, really looks at Persona 3 and they go, how do we make this better? How do we make the story better, the pacing better? How do we make the battles better? Real easy solution, by the way. How do we make the game more interesting? How do we just make the game even better? And they absolutely did make the game even better. The game is a totally different story from P3 and really has no connection to it. It takes place in Inaba, a small Japanese town out in the outskirts. You play as a transfer student, you're a new student at a high school, you've come from the big city, and you're just trying to chill out in Inaba and go to school like a normal Japanese high schooler, and shit goes wrong again. There's all these rumors about this alleged midnight channel and stuff happening late at night, and then there's people disappearing, and yeah, things get a lot more interesting than that, and I'll leave it at that. The story of Persona 4, though, wow, this is a really good story. This is one of the best stories I've played in a video game, honestly. It is absolutely fantastic. It is leagues above even Persona 3, which I thought was leagues above Persona 2. The story is a lot more interesting. The pacing is really well done. It stays very interesting throughout. The characters, I could be here all day talking about the characters. Seriously, I love all the characters in Persona 4. They are all expertly written. They're all really awesome. They have a lot of depth. They have a lot to them. They're just really well done. I could totally understand someone saying that their favorite cast of video game characters is like Persona 4's cast, because it really is just that good, and you come to really know and love these characters, especially since the game is so long and you spend so much time with them. Yeah, they're great. I could really gush on and on and on about this game when it comes to the story, characters, and world, but we don't have all day. I really do think the gameplay has improved over Persona 3 in a number of different aspects. First off, the battles are very similar, if not almost the same as Persona 3, with a major difference. You can directly control your party members, thank you. This makes it so much better. The game is a lot more balanced. It is reasonably challenged, but it is just much better because you can control them. I still really do enjoy the battles. There's a lot of strategy here. I really do like what all the characters bring to the table, and I do like the new personas. It's not just the battling that's better as well. The dungeons are quite a bit better. It's not Tartarus. These dungeons, there's a bunch you go throughout the game. They are still randomly generated for the most part, and yeah, there is still some copy pasting rooms, and I don't really like that, but it is quite a bit better than Tartarus. I actually enjoyed these dungeons, unlike Tartarus, and the controls are better. Really, just the dungeon crawling is a lot better in general. The game is also less grindy. The original PS2 version of Persona 4 is actually pretty grindy still, so I really do recommend Golden as it does balance things out and makes it way less grindy, which is very good. And then we have all the life sim stuff, which is again very similar to Persona 3. I do really like Inaba. It may be my favorite location from Persona. It's up there. It's really great. I really do like all the social interactions you can have with the characters. I do like exploring around. I do like all the fun world stuff you can do where you raise your stats, where you make your social links. I really do enjoy this. While I didn't spend as much time in the real world as I did in the TV world where the dungeons are, I still did spend a lot more in the real world than I ever did in Persona 3 because there's just a lot more to see. I feel like this game just has so much to it. It really does, and it is a very long game. It took me like 75 or 80 hours, somewhere around that, to finish it. It is not a short game by any means. You'll be with it for months, and I just loved it. Something else that I really love about Persona 4 is the music. Oh man, the music is so good in Persona 4. Again, another day where I could just spend all day talking about the music. It's better than Persona 3's. It just slaps beyond belief. And the presentation, yeah, it's okay. Persona 4 is a fantastic game, and it is one of my favorite RPGs of all time, and I could absolutely see why it's someone's favorite Persona game, or even maybe their favorite RPG ever. Like, it is just a fantastic game, top to bottom. I really don't have very many, if any, issues with it, and it fixes, like, everything I had problems with in Persona 3. But it's not my favorite Persona. I don't think it's the best. It's so close, though. No, I'm gonna be that guy who says Persona 5 is the best Persona. It's my favorite Persona, whether it's the base game or it's the Royal. I think Persona 5 really, it just is the best Persona, and I know it's like, boo, that's the casual normie take, but that's my take too. Now, obviously, I had heard good things about Persona 5, and I had played Persona 3 and thought it was pretty good, but when I got Persona 5, it was in between college semesters, and I remember just being hooked. I remember being glued to my seat. I remember like 3 or 4 10-hour, 12-hour days in a row, just all Persona 5. I fell in love with this game. I loved Persona 5 when I played through it. I really love just about every aspect of the game. Let's start with the story. I think the story is just fantastic. I would say it's on Persona 4's level, but just slightly better. It again is about you being a new student coming to a new town. This time it's Shibuya, and you start life at a new high school and you expect things to be all good, and well, it's anything but. You get dragged into this other world through your phone where there are demons and monsters, and people's most inner fears and desires come to life and make these horrible versions of them, and that's all I'm gonna say, is that the story is just absolutely phenomenal. The characters are just some of the most lovable, likable, great characters you'll find in any Persona. Really just any RPG. Like, I just absolutely adored all the characters. I really did enjoy every single character. Like, I liked every character in Persona 4, but in Persona 5 I loved like every single character. I was just like, wow, how did they make every character so interesting with such good writing and voice acting? You know, it's just all fantastic. Everyone has a lot of depth, everyone changes throughout the game, and the Royal adds a lot more to the story that wasn't even all that needed, but now it's like, oh no, now there's no going back. The Royal has the best version of the story, and it's just fantastic. If you are looking for one of the best stories in a video game, Persona 5 has it. It really has it. And you know, when it comes to the real life stuff, when you're in Shibuya with the life simular elements, it really is very similar to Persona 4, just expanded on even more. You can upgrade your stats, there's still social links to make. I really just like exploring around and just talking to everybody and just interacting with the world. This is a great time also. I just really do appreciate how much there is to do and see, and it definitely is incredibly immersive. It's like the most immersive Persona game of them all. And you know, one reason this game is so immersive is the presentation. While the presentation in 3 and 4 I think was generally pretty lackluster, especially in 4 with the frame rate issues, the presentation of Persona 5 is just absolutely phenomenal. It has this amazing art style, it looks great, it flows great, it just is fantastic. And the user interface is just phenomenal. It's one of my favorite interfaces in any game ever. Like, it's intuitive and everything looks so cool and has so much style. No, it is fantastic. It really adds to the game and adds to that immersion. The presentation is just fantastic. The music, yeah, it might be my favorite JRPG soundtrack ever. Seriously, it's up there. It's probably tied with like the original Final Fantasy VII. It's just fantastic. I have nothing bad to say about it. Just perfection. And then we have the battles and the dungeons, which are just fantastic. It's even better than Persona 4. So when it comes to the battles, it is very similar to the other Persona games. It's still, again, at heart is an SMT game. You'll be using a lot of the strategies that worked in Persona 3 and 4, but there is a lot of other nuances here, such as the baton pass, such as the guns, and, you know, just a lot of new enemies. And of course using your all-out attack, which looks just amazing now. It looks so cool. But the combat just flows so well in this game. Like, it is some of the best turn-based combat you'll find in any RPG. It just flows really well, it's really fast, it's fluid, and it's really satisfying. I just really enjoy it. I know some people might argue that it is a little simplified from Persona 4, but I really don't think so. I think if anything, it's more streamlined for the better. It makes it more just accessible to everybody without actually making the game that much easier. Yeah, the game is a bit easier than Persona 3 and 4, and if you use defense and offense buffers, you probably have no trouble in the game, but it doesn't need to be like super challenging. And then we have the dungeons, which are just a huge step above Persona 3 and 4, like a humongous step above them. You know why? Because it's not randomly generated. All these are handcrafted dungeons, they're all extremely different from each other, and they're all fantastic. They're basically heists you're doing, as the Phantom Thieves are trying to steal hearts of other people, and trust me, it's for the good. And I just really enjoy the dungeons. All the dungeons are fantastic. They're all expertly designed. They all have a lot of options to them. There's no random encounters, not that there was in 3 and 4, but I really just enjoyed all of the dungeons here. It's just superb. Now, I know that I've said really way too many times, I really have, and that's why we're getting towards the end of this video. I love Persona 5, it's one of my favorite games ever, not even close. Also love Persona 4, one of my favorite games ever as well, but yeah, Persona 5 they just don't make games this good that often, but when they do, oh, it's awesome. Now, if you made it to this part of the video, thank you very much. I'm sure I pissed off half the Persona community just by kind of existing. If you made it to this part of the video, comment bricks, as in the part that you throw through a window. I don't know why I said that. Everyone have a great day, night, Easter, Christmas, 4th of July, whatever's near you. See you later, bye-bye.
Hurry. It's not long before Joker gets Madoon. Persona!